So it is no secret that building privacy on a public blockchain is incredibly hard. It's a really challenging task, but a critical one. And so our next panel is going to focus on the bleeding edge of privacy technology in crypto. Our panelists, we have Bair from the Secret Foundation, Tadge Dryja, who works in Bitcoin, Edward Fricker from Railgun, which is a DeFi privacy project, and we have a superb moderator, McKie. He's been in crypto for a very long time, going back to the early days of Bitcoin through Ethereum. He is the founder of Amentum, which is a major crypto fund, but he's also a builder involved in the Handshake Network. I think this is going to be a fascinating conversation. So please welcome our next panel.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming and joining us to talk about privacy today. I'm joined with this fabulous panel today, and we've got some pretty excellent questions to try to get everyone to just get a good basic understanding of kind of what's going on currently in privacy, have a good sort of like foundational grasp of like where we're going next, and maybe what are some interesting innovations that might be occurring like presently, after we've gotten out of this major bull period, we're getting back to building again. We're starting to really focus and hone in on very important primitives, and privacy has been a very important one for many years. And thankfully, I have these great gentlemen to give us some insights for that today. So I'm going to go down for each of the panelists, let them give a quick introduction of themselves, and then I'm going to just lead right into the questions. Edward, would you like to give a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. My name is Edward Fricker. I'm an attorney for privacy activists, white hat hackers, and crypto developers. And I'm here representing the Railgun DAO, which is a DAO of developers promoting privacy-preserving tools on Ethereum and other smart contract blockchains for DeFi.
Thank you. Edward?
What's up, everybody? My name is Tor. I'm the founder of Secret Foundation. Secret Foundation supports, similarly, open source, privacy-centric technologies aimed at global adoption. We primarily focus on Secret Network, which is a privacy-first, layer 1 smart contract blockchain, and I've been working on this for the past 5 years, full-time.
Thank you. Tadge?
Hi, I'm Tadge Dryja. I've been working on Bitcoin for quite a while. I authored the Lightning Network, discrete log contracts, and current work on U-Tree-XO, all sort of to extend the functionality of Bitcoin, make it more scalable and private, and still working on that.
Perfect, thank you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go down. I have a question for basically that's sort of conform for each panelist, and then the fourth question would just be sort of an open-ended kind of like discussion. So for the first person I'll start with is Tor here. Tor is, of course, working at the Secret Foundation. He's got work in the general like NFT space as he's working on a platform. So Tor, like as far as like the D-Web, Web3 goes, and like the metaverse, we've seen all this expansion, all this jargon that has emerged. Crypto, Web3, metaverse, you can use all these different things interchangeably. What we're really talking about is non-fungible, scarce, valuable assets, right, that have different means and different programmability to allow users to interface with chains, right? So, kind of to really get to the core of that and what you're working on, like, what is it that you guys are focusing on at Secret and as applying privacy to the application layer as far as NFTs?
Yeah, it's such a phenomenal question. What we care about ultimately is privacy-centric technologies, right? But that expresses itself differently depending on what the user is actually interacting with. For most of crypto, Web3, blockchain history, when people thought about privacy plus blockchain, they were thinking about the Moneros of the world, the Zcashes of the world, trying to obscure the source and the destination of transactions. And that's an important development stream for crypto technology, right? Financial privacy is a fundamental right, and it's critical to functioning democracies all over the world. But then that's not where people stop experimenting, right? Once something is good for another thing, people want to see what else it can be good for. And blockchain sort of became a solution in search of new problems. And with smart contract blockchains like Ethereum, we started seeing this proliferation of Web3 decentralized permissionless applications. And we saw, of course, fungible tokens and ERC20s and DEXs and the rise of decentralized finance. And then recently, most recently, a lot of the experimentation we've seen has focused on non-fungible assets, scarce value on a blockchain, but maybe representing cultural assets or identity and reputation. Our story around privacy was challenging to tell when people were only focused strictly on financial privacy, because there's always this connotation that this is something that's going to be used illicitly. It's for laundering, it's for evading the law, it's not for being compliant, right? That's always the public narrative. We've already hashed up in previous panels why that's obviously not the case. But the story became easier to tell once people were using NFTs and metaverse applications, because for identity, for things that we own, for digital ownership, for things that we own in the real world that we now want to own online as well, it's a lot more tangible when there's a violation of our privacy or violations of our consent, and we feel like we are insecure. Because when I have an Ethereum-based NFT and everything is public to everybody all of the time, anything I've ever done with that wallet is public to everyone till the end of time, and then people publish papers saying how this is the future of identity and reputation, it'll live on this public by default platform, my immediate reaction is not excitement, it's fear. Because we're moving towards that overarching social credit score world where everything I do, I will have permanent accountability, and to whom, right? Whoever can observe the blockchain, and that could be anyone. So now what Secret is doing specifically is we built a private by default layer 1 for smart contracts. Not because specifically we think NFTs alone need to be private, but just that is the foundation where we want to see experimentation happening now. And specifically with metaverse applications and identity and reputation, it deserves a private by default foundation, because without it, we're building towards a very dangerous future. And the further we build in the NFT space and the metaverse space toward that future on public by default rails, we're going to end up with the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario for digital and creator economies. And we just want to enable an alternative future at layer 1. And then at the application layer, however that manifests for the end user, right? We just want to see them experimenting and being in a sandbox that they can still have confidence is secure.
Yes, perfect. And since we're talking about the application layer, it would make sense to sort of like make this next segue into what I have lined up for Tadge. So, we're focused on users and their privacy. We want to make sure that there is transparency, but we want that transparency to be opt-in, right? I mean, that was kind of the original core ethos around like Zcash, with shielded addresses and et cetera. Like, we want those users to be able to, make that option themselves, and then give permission for people to like view transactions if and only if I give them that permission. So Tadge, I know you as an academic in this space yourself, who's made many contributions to the general like Bitcoin space. I know you're working on a lot of interesting things in relation to privacy, and I think one of the things you're working on currently is in relation to like validation in the space. So maybe you can speak a little bit about like the importance of self-validation for privacy for users and how it's important to make that more easy for users.
Definitely. So that's, I think, I mean, obviously all these things are important, but I think one of the things that is not focused on as much is the sort of information retrieval aspect. A lot of the focus is, okay, I want private transactions, something like Zcash or Monero, where I want to make a transaction. So when someone else observes the blockchain, they can't tell how much money I sent, or they can't trace it to me that way. But something that doesn't get as much focus is there's a lot of information leakage that happens when you are not making a transaction, but actually retrieving information about your own money. So for example, if you have a seed phrase-based wallet, that lets you, figure out your private keys and then your public keys. That's not the information. You need more information to actually spend your coins, or to see how much money you have. So often the process is, okay, I type in some kind of seed phrase, or I remember my private key or store that, and then I get my public key and I say, hey, how much money do I have? And that how much money do I have is a very private question and is often asked to websites, right? Where you just go to blockchain info, you're like, hey, how much money do I have? Here's my address. Or Infura or something like that if you're using MetaMask, where you're putting in your information and it goes out to the server and finds all the granted public information about you, but that lets them link to you. They say, oh, someone at this IP address is asking about this address, and this address. Those are probably all the same person. The IP address seems to be based in Massachusetts. Oh, okay, like that. So that's a huge privacy leak that is not, I mean, people are working on it, but that's sort of what I'm focused on now, which is I'm sort of working on something called U-Tree-XO, which lets people run full nodes much more easily. It's still, you're looking for the needle in the haystack, but you make the haystack a bit smaller, right? So it's, the traditional model with Bitcoin Core and a lot of these full nodes is the way you figure out how much money you have is by looking at all the money in the entire system, right? Everyone's money, and then you're like, oh, well, that one's mine. Instead of going to a third-party server and saying, hey, how much money do I have? You look through it, and you look through it yourself, which is slow. There's also really interesting, not something I'm working on, but definitely observing, is private information retrieval. There was a recent paper where they're actually using some homomorphic encryption to do private information retrieval, which I guess as an analogy is you tell them you're looking for a needle in the haystack. They do this mathematical operation on every, long skinny thing in the haystack and give you a compact result back, and you find your needle from that, but they couldn't see what it was. That's very computationally intense, but very bandwidth efficient, right? So like very little data is going over the network and back, but that server's got to do a lot of work. It's basically got to look through each time and can't index. So there's a lot of interesting work going on in that space that I think, that's what I'm pitching. That's what I think is important as well as these other things. But I think the other sort of transaction and like pushing data to the network gets a lot of focus. And now I think we need to also focus on, okay, retrieving information in a private way. So.
Excellent. Yes, thank you. I agree with you so much. And that makes the next, this has just been perfect. And we'll make our way next now to Edward. So Edward, I know you're working on your project Railgun, right? So maybe before we kind of dig that question, you can give us a little bit of background on what Railgun is, and then I'll kind of focus in on you.
Railgun. Well, when Ethereum was invented, the technology to make transactions private didn't exist. The cryptographic systems were not as advanced as they are now. So Railgun takes recently invented cryptographic systems that are much more gas-friendly for something like Ethereum, and it uses it to create a private wallet system. So you can make a Railgun wallet that is a zero-knowledge proof system secured wallet, and you can have your 50K, 100K of USDC or stablecoins and have it in your Railgun address, and nobody will be able to know how much you have in that address. When you send money to somebody, they won't be able to see how much is left. When someone receives the money, they won't be able to see who it was sent from, and it prevents snooping. Furthermore, you're able to trade from that wallet. You are able to make a DEX trade from an anonymous address. And that means you can build up your private balance easily and securely and not have to worry about people trying to copy your trades or people giving you a credit rating based on the losses you've made on crypto dick butts, NFTs, or some
or gains.
Shiba Doge Elon, multiverse of metaverse games where you could be like losing poker matches or all these kind of things. This is a reality. In 5 years, do you think that these giant credit rating agencies won't look at your addresses and your Ethereum history? We have 5% of Western people using crypto wallets already. What happens when it's 20%? Of course, your addresses will be used to build up a credit rating for you. When you apply for a penthouse apartment lease, do you think they will ask for your wallet address history? When you apply for a senior executive position and they say, please list the wallet addresses you've used in the past, what are you going to say? Well, this is what makes it important when you make your normal payments and day-to-day, interest-bearing investments to use a privacy system. And at the moment, Railgun is the only one that works on Ethereum.
So as I understand it, it's just like asset agnostic, so that you can basically send your assets to that wallet and you can have that convenience of privacy, and then from there you can interact with any other applications. Is that the general idea?
Yeah, specifically Ethereum assets, so ERC20 tokens for Railgun, yes.
Perfect. Okay, so when we have, now that we kind of get the picture here, which is privacy is incredibly important, right? As we continue to have all this very valuable public information, right, become disseminable on the web, there will be people that will utilize it. So kind of the general thesis that I'm pulling from this is that we need to get ahead of the privacy now, and privacy now needs to be commonplace so that those individuals higher up in other positions don't go and say, well, the information's there, we'd be silly not to use it, right? Our business is going to be better from this. We can do the proper analyses on this. So if we start getting ahead of that now, we can more appropriately protect ourselves as users. Like, did we really work this hard and this long to create this massive ecosystem to just make surveillance better? Right? That's not the end goal, and that's not what we want. So, this final question, I'll leave this open-ended for us to sort of like talk in general. But so, what are some other ways that users might not even be aware of that they're losing privacy? And really, kind of the talk or the focus I want in here is how convenience for users really is the biggest deterrent to user privacy. And what Tadge is working on, Railgun, what you're working on, Secret, really it all ties together. So maybe we can just talk about like how your particular focus is making the lives easier for crypto consumers.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, the people that provide the convenience do that at a cost of taking your data. I'd like to know what you guys think about that.
Oh, I mean, Chainalysis is a lead sponsor. They have a giant booth. I went over there earlier and I just sat there and I interviewed their individual employees, how they feel about privacy, because as individuals, we understand privacy. As individuals, we know what it feels like to have our privacy violated, or if we don't know it's a privacy violation, it feels like some sort of violation, and only after the fact do we realize it was a privacy violation, or as much as it was a consent violation or a violation of somehow where we were trying to act in an empowered fashion. And as people, I think every employee of all the companies, and everybody who's attending this conference, we understand the importance of this issue. We just don't necessarily know what to do about it. Some people take the issue and they work on privacy projects. Some people understand it's an issue, but they're still going to work at one of these surveillance-focused blockchain companies because there's a business model for that. There's a lot of economic incentives in this space, in addition to user experience incentives, not to optimize for privacy. There's a lot of business models that can be built on making a completely open data model in Web3. It's just that it's going to be an absolute nightmare for the end users, worse than anything we ever had in Web2. And Web3 is supposed to be an upgrade for empowerment. Like, why do we have permissionless systems if it's just, as you said, Stephen, going to just be a perfection of some sort of surveillance state, but now it's global and boundaryless, a global boundaryless surveillance state. So when we're considering all these trade-offs, right, like consider also the uphill battle against economic incentives. Individually, we understand this is important. When we start to collect ourselves in groups, we have to be aware there could be social pressure to build the wrong systems. We shouldn't be taking easy shortcuts. We know it's a better user experience currently on blockchain to just say, put it all on the blockchain. My data model is to run naked in the street. And at least then everybody will know exactly how much hair I have on my body. I won't have to prove it to them all the time. Not the data model that I'm particularly keen on seeing take global adoption, but I'm trying to be funny to stress the urgency. Yeah. There's urgency to solve these problems. And if we make things on secret that are not as fun to use, not as easy to use, not as accessible as the things that already exist on public by default blockchains where you're naked all the time, then we are not moving fast enough to fight the inevitable conclusion of this end state of global surveillance, constant surveillance, and something that at no point can we opt out of in the future.
I think it's a funny analogy and we like it, but unfortunately it's not like running naked in the street, right? Because then your friends would be like, dude, why were you running naked in the street? So one of the really hard parts is that people don't know they're losing privacy, right? Like, it's very hard to see that you have this loss. And same with, like, a lot of times security and privacy, you only see it when it's broken. And you only see it when bad happens. And I think a big part of that is, one, we need to make user interfaces better, make the technology easier for users. But I do think education has a bit of a role to play there as well, because even in something like Bitcoin, from the very beginning, the first GPU application wasn't even GPU mining, it was Vanity Gen to make a address have your name in it. And so, whoever Satoshi makes this, fairly good anonymity-based system, and the first thing people do is like, I want to put my name on that. And it's like, and so we constantly see that as developers. It's a weird dynamic where a lot of times the developers are sort of at odds with users, where users are like, yeah, I want to put my name on these things, and I want to have I want to advertise, and I want to do these things, and the developer's like, no, we're going to try to make it private as possible, and then people throw that away. So I do think there's some aspect of like education or like showing the risks of these as things as well.
But can I quickly respond to that? Because that's the user experience issue. Like, we're already seeing in NFTs and metaverse that the first thing people want to do is flex on people. That's the only thing everybody's doing. They're putting their ape as their avatar. Rather than fight human nature, what we would say is, well, like on Secret, like you have your wallet, and in your wallet, you can have things that can be linked to your social identity, and you make all of your ownership of those assets public by default. You always have the choice to reveal. But then there can be dozens of assets sitting in that same wallet encrypted that no one else can see that you own when they inspect the blockchain. And those are still assets you can use and retain. They could retain value. You could use them to log into other composable applications, right? The fact that we're just having this very inflexible public by default model means the moment we want to have something socially identifiable, the moment we try to take that social value back out of the blockchain, we've removed our ability to ever have the privacy value. But the private by default model means whenever we take that social value from the blockchain by making something public, it's not forcing us to then reveal everything else. It's that selective revealing cypherpunk ethos that, honestly, like, if that's the bleeding edge that we're creating, I have a lot of confidence in that and very little else.
Yeah, we live in a cyberpunk future where the power of these large companies is much more powerful than any individual state or government. So as a collective, it's our responsibility to ensure that privacy is protected for the collective. Even if a few individuals do choose to give up some of their privacy in return for ease of use, there needs to be some kind of protection for us as a group. And we can only do that by sort of either combining together in to pass some kind of rules for big companies to not abuse their power over normal people to take their data, or some value that must be placed on individuals' data and activity, which only exists in a couple of countries at the moment. Most countries, and including this one, don't have any reasonable protection on privacy and user data, even though it is a human right in the as certified by the UN.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, very important is now we have these really mainstream like use cases like NFTs, where you really have people who've never interacted with a wallet before, have never backed up a wallet mnemonic. They are literally the most vulnerable people, and they are coming in the floodgates, right? And so we need to make sure that they are protected as possible now, right? And so we need to, in the past, we could skirt away a little bit by like not making those considerations and just have that raw cypherpunk ethos. We're just gonna make it as secure and private as possible, but user experience really, kind of fell to the wayside because there was this assumption of technical competency in the space. But now we can assume that the vast majority of people in crypto do not have that competency, and they're all learning. Right? So we want to make sure that they are learning in the most proficient ways possible, and also learning the best practices that, they don't want to have a mistake of, their transactional data leaking now early, and it could bite them in the ass like later in the future, excuse my language. But as you stated yourself, right, as we go forward into the future, that data is present, people will utilize it in whatever way, and it could be nefarious, it could be beneficial, also it
Not
could
just
be beneficial
present,
too.
but impossible to delete.
Exactly, right? So we want to give people that optionality. We want to continue to give people that freedom of choice with their privacy of their transactional data, and the same that they expect when they take cash out of an ATM. Once that cash is in their hand or someone pays them, they can go do and live their own life and kind of like have that assumption of privacy. That needs to exist digitally online as well, right? In order for to retain what we expect as like our own freedom of speech. Money is speech, right? And so are the commodities, NFTs that you hold in your wallet. Those are scarce assets. They belong to you. And it should be up to you to know who knows that you own that, right? So thank you, gentlemen. I think that kind of covers all the bases here, unless anybody wants to dive in anything extra.
Not extra necessarily. I was just going to say, I know there's probably a lot of people listening to that. Like, we're obviously passionate about it. I go and I see panels that I like, and people speak very passionately about things. And then I leave and I go to the booths again, I get some new swag, and I kind of forget. So I'm hoping, like, if there's calls to action, right? Like, you're working on incredible things. Yeah. Railgun's doing incredible things for the ETH environment. I'm sure a lot of people in this room interact with ETH regularly. If we all have any calls to action that people can leave this room with, so it's like it doesn't get dropped. Like, clearly this is an important issue. What do we do now if we don't want to end up in like the crazy surveillance like end state? Is there something we could do today that makes it even 5% less likely that we could?
Exactly. I'd say having the mentality, because privacy is a very much a collective good, right? If people say, oh, I don't have anything to hide, I don't need privacy. It's like, well, you need to have privacy to help the people that do have things to hide, right? And because if there's only one person who wants privacy, well, then, like in Zcash, one of the issues was that it was sort of opt-in privacy, and most people didn't opt in, so you have a very small set. So really, as yourself saying, look, yeah, I don't have anything to hide, but I need to hide it just as much as if I did, so that everyone else who is, worried about losing their privacy can maintain it.
Excellent, thank you. And just so everyone notes here and is aware, Tadge, of course, is a really OG Bitcoiner. We've got someone here from the Cosmos ecosystem. We've got someone here from the Ethereum ecosystem, me from the Handshake ecosystem. And I'm telling you, privacy is very important. We are in consensus here. Focus on that. And if anyone has any, I don't know if I have time for quick questions. Is that possible?
He says no.
Oh, he says no. Okay. Well, I apologize.
All of our Twitter DMs are open, probably.
Yeah. So,
look it up. I'm just @Bair. Please, if you care about this stuff, reach out to me or Edward or Tadge or Steven.
We're around.
Yes.
Yep. I love Twitter DMs, please.
Yes. Please send us a message. Find us on the consensus site. Send us a message. And if you want to chat with us here in and around the venue and you see us, please let us know.
Great. Thanks.